All right, welcome back, Ranger fans and Winnipeg Jets fans. We got a very special crossover edition for you guys here today. This is John Chick with Locked On New York Rangers, joined here by Harrison L. of Locked On Winnipeg Jets. Harrison, how we doing today, buddy?
Not too bad. How about you?
Doing pretty well. Still kind of reeling from the Rangers just having a disastrous performance in New Jersey the other night, but overall, good trade deadline day for them. So I guess we'll take the good with the bad. But I definitely want to ask you about this trade. And for anybody who needs a quick refresher, everything that went one way or the other in this trade, you had Andrew Copp and a 6th-round pick in 2023 going from Winnipeg to New York. And then you also had from New York to Winnipeg, Morgan Barron, 2 second-round picks. One of the second-rounders can become a first-rounder if the Rangers make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and also a 5th-round pick from the Rangers to the Jets in 2023. So a lot of moving parts, but Harrison, I just wanted to ask you, what was your reaction to this trade? Did you think that this was going to happen? I mean, obviously, he's an impending unrestricted free agent. So just your general thoughts when you saw this trade go down the other day.
I think pretty much everyone from like the Jets fandom and really from the team, they were expecting Andrew Copp to be traded. The biggest question was to where, and I think there was a lot of debate over who would be the best trade partner. And it's funny because like the Rangers and the Jets over the past couple of years, they're kind of like really good friends. They just seemingly swap players all the time, which is kind of a funny working relationship. But as far as the Copp trade is concerned, I was pretty okay with it. I think it's got like a nice floor of a couple of second-round picks. You got Morgan Barron, who seems like he's a pretty decent prospect, and I'll probably ask about him later today. But overall, I thought it was, about what I expected. I know that the Jets are probably hoping for like a first-round pick guaranteed from somewhere, but it just doesn't seem like with the market the way it was that anyone was really going for it. If it was a defenseman, maybe, but it seems like some of the forwards were a little bit more depressed in trade value. So given the circumstances, I was pretty okay with it.
Yeah, I considered it a small win that the Rangers didn't have to give up a first-rounder to get him because I felt like it was a little bit of a seller's market this year. Guys were getting pretty decent returns. I do want to ask you about the trade from this perspective too, though, because, I looked at the standings a little bit earlier today. Jets, they're on the outside of the playoff picture looking in, but they're not out by that much. I think it's only 3 points behind the Dallas Stars. So was there any, were you or Jets fans in general, was anybody like upset that this trade was made and people saying, oh man, we should be going for it. We're right there. Let's try to get into the playoffs. Or did you feel like the return was enough to justify the trade?
I think a couple of years ago, Jets fans probably would have felt differently than they do now. They would have been like really gung-ho to make it. Over the past couple of years, though, I think the general sentiment has started to turn towards the Jets being very underwhelming. And so this trade, because Copp was not resigning at all, and his agent and stuff made that pretty clear, I think most people were pretty accepting of it. The team kind of needs a bit of a makeover long term, and I think that there's a lot that has to change, both at a coaching level and with the roster. But Copp, as much as everyone liked him, he's not the kind of guy. He's not like a Mark Scheifele or a Pierre-Luc Dubois. So fans were a little bit more open to letting him go. And I think, I wasn't really loving the idea of like a 5x5 extension. That's a pretty decent chunk of money. And with the Jets where they are, I think it was just a sort of a mutual parting of ways. So in this case, I think it actually worked out for both parties. And the Jets, I don't know that I really want them to even push for the playoffs. I still think that they're going to do it anyways because they need playoff revenue and stuff. But yeah, not really focused on that as much.
Hey, you know what? It's anybody's game if you get in, though. I mean, we saw Montreal against all odds. Nobody was picking them. They went to the finals last year. So we'll see if the Jets can, pull it off despite being, I guess, what you could call a soft seller at the deadline. But, we talked about everything that went in both directions. Do you feel like the return was about right for Andrew Copp, or do you think the Jets got more than they should have been able to, or was it not quite enough? I mean, just kind of give us a feel for that if you can.
So I think the return was pretty okay. It's about what I thought would be a nice comparable package. The one thing that did kind of catch my eye was I think one of those second rounders can be deferred to 2023. And if that's the case, and I don't recall if it had any particular conditions, but if it is, I think that's actually pretty good for the Jets. Obviously Winnipeg at this point is just rooting for the Rangers to make it through a couple of playoff rounds and get to the conference finals. I'm sure Copp will play a pivotal role if that happens because, Andrew's pretty decent. So I could see him being a nice impact forward there. Kind of an interesting sequence of moves I thought the Rangers made. I'm not really sure where the team stands at the end of it, but I'm curious to see how Copp really fits in. Because, looking at what they paid for him, it wasn't like the most expensive package, but it certainly wasn't cheap. So I think for both sides, the return was pretty fair.
Yeah, I think the Jets did a nice job, getting themselves obviously 2 high draft picks, the 2 second rounders. And for the Rangers, not just with the Copp trade, but I think with the other moves that they made at or near the deadline, they did a nice job making their team better, but not giving up, big time draft picks, no first rounders, again, unless they make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and didn't really have to give up any prospects either. So, like you were saying, Harrison, man, I think it's pretty much a win-win for both of these teams here. And something that I really like about Andrew Copp before he even came to the Rangers, the way I've been describing him, and you can tell me if this is accurate or not, I feel like he's one of those guys. He's like a B+ at everything. This guy, he may not be a superstar in any one singular aspect of the game, but this guy does a little bit of everything to help you win. And, something that I really like is that he can play, up and down the lineup. He can play special teams. He can play any of the forward positions. Is there a position that you think that he plays best among the 3 forward positions? And which position did he play most often for Winnipeg there?
So I think he's best as a center. When he's down the middle, his game is just so much more well-rounded. Recently, he's been cast as a winger alongside Copp or alongside Adam Lowry. He's also played with Mark Scheifele as a winger. They again, like you said, he's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. So they just sort of toss him everywhere they can. I will say that he used to be like a defensive specialist, but over the past couple of years, his game has actually trended more towards being an attacking-minded forward. So sometimes the defensive work not as stout as it used to be, but when it comes to like the penalty kill and stuff, he's definitely very dangerous. He and Adam Lowry have been creating a lot of shorthanded chances recently, so you can basically do whatever you want with him. And if you put him at center and you give him the right line mates, I think he'll make like an elite middle six forward.
That makes sense to me. And, I figure we'll continue talking about Copp. We'll get into some other things as well. I know you want to ask me at least a question or two about Morgan Barron, who you got in the trade, and we'll get to all that in a second. But first, just want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers and Locked On Jets is brought to you by BetOnline.net. It is that time of year again, as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. And we just want to thank everybody for making Locked On Rangers and Locked On Jets your first listen every day. Both shows are free on all platforms. And, Harrison, getting back to Copp real quick here, obviously he just made his debut for the Rangers, that disastrous outing against the Devils, but he had a nice game, had 2 assists. And something that really stood out for me was right off the bat, he actually led the Rangers in time on the ice on the penalty kill. And I know that's something that he does quite a lot of. Was he one of the elite penalty killers on the Jets? And do you think that will continue where he'll see a lot of time when the Rangers are shorthanded?
Yeah. So, the Jets penalty kill, I'll be honest, it does kind of suck at times, but I don't think it was, it wasn't really on guys like Copp so much as it was the system that they were using. After Paul Maurice left, it actually has improved quite a bit. So Copp has definitely been, when it comes to penalty killers for the Jets, one of the most well-rounded and one of the best. And I think his work rates and his defensive work, especially a couple of years ago, really made him like a perfect fit. The guy loves blocking shots. He likes intercepting passing and shooting lanes. He's a very smart player, and I think he understands how to pick off stuff very well. And he's also really physical. I mean, a lot of people don't realize this, but he loves grinding on the forecheck. He'll get into the corners, and he's not afraid to throw with the shoulder a little bit. So if you're looking for somebody who can kind of be a bit of a pest on the penalty kill and also unafraid to sort of pressure puck carriers as they're moving around the blue line and stuff and really making it difficult, that's kind of Copp's specialty.
Yeah, for sure. I think we saw a little bit of that on display, in his season debut with the Rangers there. And I wanted to ask you, do you get a kind of a sense, watching his interviews over the years and just watching him interact with teammates, like what kind of a personality he has? I know he had kind of a funny moment during his introductory presser. There was a situation where one of the media members' cell phone went off and he was answering a question. And in the middle of his answer, he was like, "That's a fine." And then he just kept going with his answer there. So I'm just wondering, man, like what kind of, is he like, does he keep things loose? Is he intense? Just kind of give me a feel for that if you can, how he kind of interacts with his teammates and the role he has, on the Jets previously.
The vibe I kind of got with him is he's kind of like almost like a little bit of a laid back surfer bro type. But when it comes to like his performance on the ice and how he feels the team is doing, he is kind of a quiet leader. Sometimes it's gotten a little more vocal recently. I think you could tell that he wasn't super pleased with how the Jets have been. I think he wasn't happy that the team, it's kind of been spinning wheels for a few years now. And I feel like Copp, he's what, getting closer to 28, something like that, 27, 28. So, he wants to really be on a competitive squad. And I think as the Jets have kind of struggled, he really wants to be somebody who's seen as, a player you can look up to, you can rely on, and somebody who can kind of rally the troops. And I think he had very good terms with a lot of the Jets leadership. He was calm in his interviews, and I think he was very composed. But you could tell that there's like that burning passion underneath where he wants to be somebody who, again, the Jets turn to constantly. And I'm sure with how the Rangers are, he would be a perfect fit for that locker room.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's interesting because the Rangers have a situation where, Ryan Strome, he's typically their second line center. I'm sure he will continue to be for the rest of the season here. But he's also an impending unrestricted free agent at season's end. And, they're talking for a while and then they're not talking, they're talking and they're not talking. So I'm wondering if it might be that they don't feel like they can get a deal done with Ryan Strome and they see Andrew Copp as maybe a slightly cheaper alternative. Maybe he could be the second line center going forward. But I'm just wondering, you mentioned that, Jets fans weren't too hopeful about an extension. Do you have any idea like what kind of numbers and years were being tossed around for Copp and what he kind of balked at? Because it sounded like he didn't really want to sign the extension.
Yeah, so from what I heard, he turned down a $5 million by 4 deal. So 20 total. It sounds like he's looking for 5 or 6 years, and maybe a bit more cash. I don't know how much more he could really command on the market, just because I think his comparable is probably somewhere around Zach Hyman, into similar kind of player, but I don't know if his reputation is at the level where he could start to really push for more than that, because recently he's been like hitting career highs in points and stuff, but because he doesn't have like a super long track record of it, I don't know if it would push a lot further than 5. I think like 5.5 would probably be like the high end of his cap hit.
It's funny because that's about the price that I think the Rangers are looking to go to with Ryan Strome, but probably not much more than that. I mean, he's currently making 4.5. And, based on everything you've said, I think the offer that the Jets made was pretty fair. I guess from your point of view, maybe it's a little unfortunate that a deal couldn't get done, but then again, now you've got a little bit more cap space to play with going forward. And obviously you got a nice return on the trade as well. Do you want to ask me anything about Morgan Barron? I mean, obviously he's the one tangible piece that went back. Everything else was draft picks. So any questions about Barron? I can kind of give you the lowdown on him.
Yeah, I think, for Jets fans, we're just curious to know what kind of player he is, because from what I've heard, he's like 6'4", he's huge. And it sounds like he was maybe kind of like a really tall Andrew Copp-like player, but I kind of, from the sounds of it, he sounds more like Adam Lowry. So I was curious to know what you've gotten from him.
I can see those comparisons a little bit. And I should just preface everything that I'm about to say here by saying that, he only played 18 total games with the Rangers. There were 5 last year toward the end of the regular season. The Rangers were out of the playoffs by then, so they wanted to call him up, just give him a little bit of run. And then 13 games this year. And he was kind of in and out of the lineup. For one reason or another, it just never felt like he could really, take a firm grip on a spot in the lineup night in and night out. And it was kind of hard to figure out because when he was in there, seemed like he played with a lot of tenacity, fairly defensively responsible player, especially for being as young and as inexperienced as he is. And, you look at some of the players that the Rangers dress pretty much night in and night out. Greg McKegg is a guy that comes to mind. Ranger fans tend to, give him a little bit of flack because he's not, the most talented player in the world. He is what he is. He's a fourth liner and a penalty killer, and there's not really any upside to speak of. But yeah, it was hard to figure out why guys like McKegg and a couple others were always in the lineup, and Morgan Barron, for one reason or another, just could not stick. He's somebody that became a crowd favorite pretty fast. There were a lot of Ranger fans. If you go on social media, everybody was clamoring to see more of Morgan Barron. Somebody that, produce a good amount of points at Cornell University. He was a point per game player, not this year, but last year with the AHL Hartford Wolfpack, and somebody that was a 6th-round draft pick. So for that reason alone, kind of makes him fun to root for because he's a little bit of an underdog. And I mean, Harrison, we've both watched a lot of hockey, and we know, man, you're a 6th-round draft pick. NHL history is littered with 6th-round draft picks that never get anywhere near the NHL. So in some ways, he's already beaten the odds. I don't know that he's got, tremendous upside the way a lot of other young players around this league might. But for somebody that could kind of round out your bottom 6, maybe step into a 3rd-line role, a 4th-line role, I think he would suit most teams just fine. And I think you got a good young player here. And I will say this, the dude plays really hard. So it's never going to be a lack of effort with Morgan Barron. If he gets a chance to play for the Jets this season, which I'm hoping he does because I like the kid, I think you guys are going to like him pretty quickly.
Yeah, we're very eager to see what he can bring, and hopefully, with some of the departures the Jets have had, we've definitely lost a few roster players, and I think the Moose themselves are looking for a deep playoff run. The Jets are trying to compete as well, so this is like a really prime opportunity for, at either level, him to make an immediate impact on this team.
Yeah, it's interesting, because the Jets, obviously, they made that trade. They sent Copp away, but they are still in the middle of this playoff race. And I'm happy for Morgan Barron because, a lot of times on deadline day, it's teams that are definitely going to the playoffs that trade with teams that are definitely not going to the playoffs. But he lands in a place where, maybe he even takes Copp's spot in the roster and gets into the middle of a playoff chase. I mean, do you think they could do that? Do you think we could see him debut fairly soon for the Jets at the NHL level there?
I think it probably would have happened if they hadn't traded for Mason Appleton and Zach Sanford. The roster right now actually has like a decent logjam of middle 6 and bottom 6 players. So I don't know if the plan is to kind of get Morgan a game or two. It depends on what the Jets, I think, are at with the playoff race in a couple of weeks. My gut feeling is the Jets are not going to be able to get past Dallas. Now, if Vegas kind of keeps faltering, there's a chance that the timing sort of works out. But Morgan might be kept with the Moose for the time being, just because Manitoba is on like a very clear track, and I think they're starting to bulk up for a real deep playoff run. So this year it might just be that he doesn't really get a lot of Jets time, but I could see him being really pivotal at the AHL level, especially because like Manitoba, they've lost a lot of players to the Jets over the past couple of weeks. Winnipeg has had some like injury issues and stuff, so this would be a time where it's actually super convenient for him to be joining the org so that they can, not worry so much about guys departing the team. And it sounds like from all accounts, he's a really good player and he's been, dominating for the Wolfpack. So Manitoba's probably thrilled to add him.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how they use him. And like you said, I mean, hopefully he gets a chance at the NHL level, at some point this season, maybe even, who knows, he might even be playing for this team in the playoffs. Crazier things have definitely happened. But I wanted to ask you, there was another player that, I did a special, leading up to the trade deadline. I was looking at the non-playoff teams and trying to figure out, ideal trade targets for the Rangers from all those teams. And I didn't really expect this to happen, but I tossed out Mark Scheifele as kind of like an off-the-wall pick. Now, obviously, the Jets don't have to trade him because he's got 2 more years left on his contract at a very reasonable price for as good of a player as he is. But, I mean, how do you think this shakes out with Scheifele? Is there a chance he gets moved in the off season, or is he there for the long haul? I mean, they could go into like a rebuild if they trade him. Obviously, they could get a lot for him. Just any thoughts on Mark Scheifele and the big picture with him there on the Jets?
So Scheifele's kind of in an odd spot because he only has a couple of years left, and he's 28. And I think the team, I don't have like a lot of insight into the back rooms and stuff, but I get the sense with the rumors that are starting to leak out, and the fact that Scheifele's being mentioned as a player the Jets have to make a decision on, it feels like he's gone. It feels like they're going to trade him. I think this would not be a consideration if somebody with the team is not looking to start the trade talks. Because I think, where the team is, the fact that Dubois has basically supplanted him immediately as the most dangerous center on the team, Scheifele's lack of defensive work, and just the kind of mediocre play that we've seen from him at times, I think the Jets are just kind of tired of it. And I think that, it's not just Scheifele that has a lot of issues with the performance levels and stuff, but Mark, he is kind of seen as somebody who's supposed to be a leader on the ice. And I think just for his sake, I think he really needs a change of scenery. The past couple of years, his body language, the interviews that he's given, the expressions that he has. He just does not seem happy. And it's like, for me, on the one hand, I'm like super frustrated with how he's played, but on the other hand, like understanding what the Jets have done and how they've disappointed, I really can't blame him. I totally get it from like a personal perspective why he'd be kind of maybe be a little bit pissed even. So if he wants to start over and go to a place like the Rangers would be a pretty good landing spot. I could see him immediately fitting into a team that has like a second line center role for him. I think that there could be something there. The Rangers, we already have a good working relationship with the trade stuff. There's been a lot of precedent. Somehow the Rangers are slowly turning into Winnipeg 2.0. I don't know how that's managed to happen, but we seemingly love swapping players. So there might be something there.
It's funny you say that because for a while it was the Tampa Bay Lightning that were, Rangers South, and now it's the Carolina Hurricanes. I swear there's like 9 former Rangers playing for the Canes right now. So, the Canes, they're a team that definitely scares me come playoff time. And if they make some crazy run and go to the Stanley Cup Finals, I'm definitely going to be very, very conflicted when that happens because I'd be happy for my former Rangers, but man, it'd be cool to win it in New York instead,
Yeah, I think Jets fans, they were probably hoping for guys like Trouba and Copp to be on a Jets winning Cup team, but obviously that never really panned out. So we'll have to accept a Rangers run instead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess by default, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it sounds like Jets fans are going to have to root for the Rangers. If you want that first round draft pick, you're going to have to root for them to get conference finals. But, I figure we could pretty much wrap up there. But is there anything you're looking for from the Jets the rest of the way? Are there certain prospects that you'd like to see them promote to the NHL level? Or would you hold off on that since they're still in the playoff race? Just kind of a feel for what you're hoping for from the Jets the rest of the way.
Honestly, I'd be totally okay with them playing some kids. Ville Heinola is one that I really feel they need to start opening up space for. I think he's the kind of kid where if you leave him too long with the AHL team, the way that he plays and the way that he thinks about stuff, I think the AHL doesn't really suit his game. So the only way that he's really going to develop is to kind of get called up and play with the Jets. And I think, honestly, Winnipeg's defense is bad enough to where he would actually be, just by virtue of really fast and really good at moving the puck, he'd be an improvement. I wouldn't mind Barron getting some reps on the fourth line. I mean, Winnipeg's bottom six isn't all that special. So if the Jets want to give him a run out or David Gustafson, I'd be pretty cool with that. I think the Jets have lots of room for internal improvement, and even if they are chasing a playoff spot, the future is also at stake. So get your evaluations in now and start thinking about the subsequent seasons.
That makes sense to me. And like I said, I figure we can call it there. But Harrison, listen, man, this is a ton of fun. I think I speak for all Ranger fans when I say we certainly appreciate getting a little bit more background on Andrew Copp. We've only seen him play the one game, and obviously you've been watching in the past couple of seasons there in Winnipeg. But yeah, ton of fun, and we'll definitely have to do this again sometime.
For sure.
All right, and Ranger fans, Jet fans, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.